The New York Giants had what I'm sure a lot of their fans and people in the organization felt was a very disappointing 2013 season. This is a team that 2 years before had won the Super Bowl. This is a team that probably had designs and visions of winning at least their division in 2013, and that just flat out didn't happen. It was a bit of a disastrous season. You start off 0-6, you're really asking for trouble, and they looked bad. They looked terrible those first 6 games. They managed to salvage the season though, and not have it be a total loss, going 7-3 the rest of the way. But as some fans might sit there and say, well, that shows that they finished strong, and that shows that hey, this team is poised for a big bounce back year in 2014. I say, let's look at those 7 victories. A bad Minnesota team, a Philadelphia team that hadn't found its footing yet, a bad Oakland team, a Green Bay team without Aaron Rodgers, a Washington team twice that had already caved in on the season, and a Detroit Lions team in Week 16 that had also caved in at the end of the season. So a lot of troubling things for the New York Giants organization, and they didn't exactly have the best offseason either, even though some people disagree with me. Just because you make a ton of moves doesn't necessarily mean you got better. Just because you make some big flashy free agent signings does not necessarily mean that makes your team better equipped for success the upcoming season. I mean, you look at some of the losses they had. Yes, an older Justin Tuck, but they still lose Justin Tuck. They lose Hakeem Nicks. They lose Andre Brown. They lose Linval Joseph. Chris Snee retires due to age and injuries. They lost some key important pieces of championship teams right there. And then you're talking about, in terms of the additions they made, the guys like the Dominique Rodgers-Cromarties, the Jeff Schwartzes, the Jamil McClains, the Rashard Jennings, the Walter Thurmans, the Robert Ayers, Odell Beckham Jr. in the first round, Weston Richburg in the second round. I like those selections in the first 2 rounds of the draft. But in terms of their free agent moves, Schwartz is okay. DRC, sometimes he's called doesn't really care for a reason. And now that you've given him a big, huge, massive contract, is he going to really play like he really cares? And again, I have concerns about teams that have to sit there and address so many holes via free agencies, because I think that really indicates just how many concerns the organization has about their roster as a whole, and just how many holes that roster and that organization actually has to fill. Looking ahead to 2014, though, I do see some strengths for the New York Giants. I really like their talent at the wide receiver position. I mean, you've got Victor Cruz there, a really nice player. You've got Ruben Randall, who's a bit mercurial, if you will, but he's definitely got huge upside and huge talent, as does their first-round pick, Odell Beckham Jr. They've got some nice weapons on the outside to help out Eli Manning in that Giants passing game. I look at their secondary and I say, it will be improved in 2014. Bringing in DRC and having a Mukamura on the other side, this will be a secondary that I think will play better, which has been a bit of a bane of the existence of the Giants' defense in recent years. They've also got an improved offensive line. I'm not sure about Will Beatty still at left tackle. I think they're going to start off with Justin Pugh on the right side to start off the year. You bring in Jeff Schwartz at some point in time, I'd assume. Weston Richburg will get the starting job over, I believe it is, J.D. Walton. So I would expect the line to be improved, and that's a very important thing, because that line was terrible for a good portion of the 2013 season. They were terrible in their run blocking, and they were also terrible in their pass protection for Eli Manning, which led to him, with a lack of a running game and a lack of protection, being under siege and pressure all the time, to making a lot of bad decisions and feeling like he had to shoulder too much of the burden, and you saw the disastrous results for him and the team last season. They have some big question marks, though. For a team that for so many years has really been identified by their front four and that front four's ability to generate a great pass rush. You're talking about a team now that over the past couple of years has lost Osi Umenyiora, Justin Tuck, Linval Joseph now. You've got a Jason Pierre-Paul hopefully coming back healthy. But again, as much as everybody loves to praise Jason Pierre-Paul, you're talking about a guy that's had one big monster season with 16.5 sacks and really hasn't done much else other than that. And that's the truth. Their linebacking core is still suspect to me, as it has been for years. The whole front seven of this defense is one big question mark. Then I also look at the running game. They bring in Rashard Jennings, and I think that was a nice move. I'm not sure if it's much of an upgrade over Andre Brown, probably more of a lateral move, if anything. David Wilson, are you going to get anything out of him? He's a Virginia Tech running back, and he can't stay healthy. Probably not. Puts a lot of pressure maybe on fourth-round pick Andre Williams to come in and play big. The running game is a big question, as is the tight end position. One way to help protect your franchise quarterback is to give him that safety valve, that nice intermediate target at tight end, and it looks like the Giants just completely lack that, like they've lacked it last year with Brandon Myers. They just didn't get anything out of him, and it showed. Looking ahead to the 2014 schedule, just like the Cowboys, they draw the AFC South, which isn't terrible, and then they draw the NFC West, which isn't great. Their NFC conference games, you've got Atlanta. Oof. It's not great. It's not terrible, but it's not great. That's for damn sure. The first 7 weeks of this season, I think, are really going to determine it all for the New York Giants in 2014. You look at last season, starting off 0-6, you can't bury yourself in a big, huge hole like that and expect to be a playoff team come the end of the season. Their first 7 weeks, they go to Detroit, home against Arizona, home against Houston. They go to Washington, home against Atlanta, at Philadelphia, at Dallas. If they have any thoughts or visions on contending in that division or at least sniffing around the wild card, they probably at least at the very worst got to go 3-4, if not 4-3 through those first 7 games. If they don't put a bow on them, they're wrapped up. The season is done. Their keys to success, first and foremost, they got to be able to protect Eli Manning better. That means having a more consistent, effective running game and also being able to keep pressure out of his face and keep him upright, which means that offensive line needs to pass protect a hell of a lot better than it did in 2013. Again, they've got to be able to run the ball consistently. They need more balance. They need to take pressure off of Eli Manning and that Giants passing attack. They need to get some type of pass rush out of that front four. Looking at that Giants front four right now, I don't see a lot of pass rush. And for a defensive scheme that for so many years has been built around the pass rush of that front four to make everything go on that end, if that's a question mark, it makes me question the entire defense. Looking ahead to 2014, I just don't see where the Giants got better in the offseason. I just don't see where the Giants made big, huge strides. I don't see where this Giants team is a playoff team at all. Again, after that 0-6 start yet last season, yes, they did finish the season 7-3 in their last 10 games, which some Giants fans I'm sure will point to. But again, I emphasize, it's about who they beat in those 7 games. That's not necessarily an indicator of great success coming in 2014. For God's sakes, they beat a bad Minnesota team, a Philadelphia team that hadn't found its footing, a bad Oakland team, a Green Bay team without Aaron Rodgers. They beat Washington twice, who by that point in time had well since given up on the season. And then Week 16, when they beat Detroit. Again, this was a Detroit team that had mentally imploded. What does that really show? That shows that the Giants beat some bad teams that couldn't really beat anybody worth a damn. I think this team will get off to another slow start this year. The fact they have to play Philadelphia, an improved Atlanta team, maybe an improved Houston team, a very solid Arizona team, maybe an improved Detroit team. I think you're going to get off to a tough start again, and I'm not sure these free agent signings that they did make and these moves they made in the offseason compensated for some of the losses they had in guys like Justin Tuck and Hakeem Nicks and Linval Joseph especially. I think this is going to be a team that struggles all year long. I envision the Giants maybe finishing 6-10, at least ahead of the Cowboys, but still well out of playoff contention and in third place in the NFC East.